Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think if we can settle down, we can start the session. I'm going to request our speakers to come and join me. I'm going to request Mr. R.N. Prasha to join us, along with Colonel Ajay Singh. I don't see Dr. Deo. If he's here, great. Yeah, please. So we have now, in this session, two speakers who are physical and one virtual, Abhijit Mitra Iyer. And the discussion is going to be on the subject of geopolitics and the impact on the subject which is very dear to our heart, which is energy, electricity, etc. Dr. Deo is here, so you can join us straight away, sir. We're waiting for you. Yes. So I think I'll make my remarks and then we'll have this fellow Abhijit Iyer on board and then begin. So every year we start the conference with the subject of geopolitics and the impact it has on the energy sector and then indirectly on our lives. A lot of people said, geopolitics, something happening in Ukraine, how am I concerned? Mujhe kya lena dena? What do I got to do with it? Then they realized that the price of grains is going up because Ukraine and Russia are the largest, were the largest, I imagine they still are, of food grains. And the world's food supply gets affected. Then there is this discussion, all right, Russia, Ukraine is having a fight, what has that got to do with me? Then you begin to realize that, and my speakers will talk at length, that the impact of that conflict is affecting oil prices. And it's affecting oil prices means our petrol cost, diesel cost is going up. So we get affected by that. So geopolitics has a very big impact on our lives. And therefore, as an opening, it's necessary to start off looking at the global scenario, because the global scenario is something which we are connected to. We are not disconnected from it. We can't say, no, we are in India, we have nothing to do with Ukraine and humko kya lena dena and all that stuff. You also have new conflicts coming up. So, for those of you who are repeating this event, you would know that we started this Net Zero initiative about 3 years ago. This is our third year, where IPPI's mission is to see whether we can get to Net Zero, which also is a Government of India, our Prime Minister's initiative. And I think it's time that people realized, it's, nothing to do with me attitude has to stop, because whatever you do is impacting the planet's weather is changing, huge floods, and then there is a weather pattern change where there is drought. Then there is another tamasha going on with regard to strange things. For example, I was just discussing with some people, Himachal and Kashmir just received snow now in February or end of Jan. They're supposed to get it November, December. So people who used to go, for example, to Gulmarg to do skiing found there is no snow. And so their holidays went for a six. So what I'm trying to say is climate change is affecting us. And we better wake up to it. And that's what the Net Zero initiative is all about. We are not the only ones on the planet doing it, and we don't want to take exclusivity, but our contribution, a small contribution, is based on the fact that this needs to be done, not this or that, but this and that. All initiatives have to be taken care of. In the recent past, we find that the conflicts have now gone beyond Ukraine. We had in the last 1 year the Israeli and Hamas situation, various schools of thought, what is right, what is wrong, who's to blame, what's the solution? Is it the solution is to stop the war? If so, how? And then from that, Hamas, it has started escalating into Syria, Iraq, and recently Iran. And they also had an escalation with Pakistan. So again, this friction is expanding. And I'm sure our experts are going to talk about it. So I mean, just, of course, not to mention the China Taiwan crisis. All of you would know that last year, I think, in the Suez Canal, one ship got stuck. Huh? Evergrande, whatever that ship was. वो एक ship रुक गया, and the result was that car deliveries, motorcycle deliveries, everything else that needed sensors could not be made. So all of a sudden, delivery of cars and trucks and scooters and motorcycles got delayed. So the world is very, very connected, is my point. And being connected, you need to realize that what action you take here has a reaction somewhere else and has an impact on the climate. And therefore there are multiple things happening at the same time. Today we are starting the geopolitical session with our esteemed speakers. They're experts on the subject. I'll just take a very short introduction to everybody because of my throat, which is going to go off shortly, since I've got a throat problem. Mr. R.N. Prashar is one of the most amazing persons I've met. I met him when he was the Energy Secretary of Haryana, which is what, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? No? Almost. All right, almost 20 years ago. And I found him to be a brilliant, clear thought person. And then over a period of time, what I find is he started writing articles which he was sharing with us, which are absolutely unbelievable on the geopolitics. So I never imagined an IAS officer who's, a Sarkari, actually writes some brilliant pieces on geopolitics, and I think that's very impressive. And so we are privileged to have you here, sir, to speak with us. Of course, our mentor, Dr. Deo, everybody knows him. He's been the MERC chairman. He's been the CRC chairman. He's done his PhD in energy. He has run the Energy Management Center way back in 99, 2000? 89. My God, I met you then. Okay, sorry. I'm growing old. So he's been in energy throughout his career and a tremendous amount of experience. Last but not least, I want to introduce Colonel Ajay Singh. Colonel Ajay Singh is a Fauji. And he is going to release his book, Ukraine, Gaza and Taiwan, which is lying here. We'll be releasing it just now. and then he's going to share his thoughts. And he, being an expert and a thought leader on the geopolitics, is going to share with us his thoughts on how the situation is developing in the world, and what are we waiting for, what are we going to be preparing for, and what are going to be the impacts as we go along, and what we should be ready to face while we are trying to get the climate under control and all of that stuff. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Prashad. You want to help him release his book? You of course can go there, of course. इनकी किताब रिलीज करनी है. हाँ, किताब की रिलीज करनी है, इसलिए आपको मैं कह रहा था. Colonel साहब, let's release your book.
Can I have the mic? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a huge pleasure being out here in a locale as wonderful as this, an environment as good as this one. And I can't think of a better setting to really release my book on Ukraine, Gaza, Taiwan. Incidentally, it was launched just last Saturday by the CDS in Pune. But in front of the audience, I would like to unveil it once again and also present a copy of it to Mr. Haridol, and I do hope you would enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, this book is also the subject of my own talk on how three conflicts, one on its way out, one erupting, and one emerging, is likely to change the world as we feel it now.
Thank you. Those of you who don't know CDS, CDS is our Chief of Defense Staff. That's General Chauhan. Right. Okay. Fantastic. I got that right. Dr. Deo, you want to say something?
I really have no expertise on the subject.
Great. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah. In absence of...
Just welcome everyone.
In fact, I'm delighted that I'm present at this release of the book. And obviously, I'll hope to learn from this discussion. And also, Harry is expecting me to fulfill the duties of my wife, who for family reasons could not come. She is in Indian Foreign Service. She has been ambassador, but more important is she has done long stint in Washington, D.C. And that's really her expertise, because she knows how geopolitics works. And she started the days where we did not have a lobbyist. So in fact, as a minister, political, they had to carry their own stools, like the umpires have. Because if you had to attend, Dan Burton brought any resolution against India, and you had to be present and do the lobbying. That was the thing. Then the connection with energy also goes from those days. So we had no lobbyists. So who was that? Obviously Boeing, since we have been buying Boeing, but other was, very important was Enron. Now Enron is a much abused subject. We'll talk about it throughout this thing, and I'm sure that Harry will have a lot to say. But again, they had to call Enron people, and they used to keep running, and they used to support, and those were the efforts. So if she had come, she would have been able to throw more light on this. So in her absence, I don't want to assume that I have expertise. No, this is something which I have seen, experienced. And anyway, I was in Denmark that time, and I was working on climate change, economics of it. So I used to be working in different countries and seeing how it impacts. And you can imagine, this was 93 to 98 period. So that time, after the Kyoto Protocol, we were talking about what should be done. And I'm surprised, we seem to be repeating the same thing. So nothing moves, no? So foreign policy also, I think in a way is like that. It's a cyclical world, and it's a cyclical order. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Very kind of you. to try and fill up for your wife. Difficult, but nevertheless. I didn't know IAS can fill up. I didn't know IAS can fill up for IFS, but doesn't mind. We'll do that. Gulrez, are we going virtual? Are we going virtual? So let's start off with Mr. Prashar, sir.
One great characteristic of being human is that we think we know everything. And the events of last few years have shown us that it's time to know what we do not know. Things have moved so fast, all experts have been left behind. And just as an example, Harry mentioned Ukraine war and oil. The presumption of Putin while attacking Ukraine was that Europe will sink, they will freeze in winters. And the West's presumption was that...
This is without gas, because he cut off the gas. Is that what he's saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So Putin thought they can't afford to have that situation where their gas from Russia will be cut off. And West thought that Putin cannot have that situation where he cannot sell his gas because then Russia will be bankrupted. And neither of the things happened. And the solution was simple. Europe went for, instead of piped gas, which is CNG, they went for LNG, which can be brought by ships from anywhere in the world. And they invested in storage, stored in summers for the winter. And we all know that 2 winters have passed and Europe did not freeze. On the other hand, Russia did not go bankrupt because the West had not factored in the tricks played by China and India. We bought their cheap oil, enriching ourselves, and also feeding Europe with that oil. Because only 2 days ago, the report has come that refined products, petrol and diesel in UK are originally from Russia because India is refining and selling to UK. So we make a lot of presumptions and things don't happen that way. And it's time we learn that instead of making these one-point presumptions, we could always have a set of alternative scenarios so that we could be prepared for any one of them. So this period of a few years, less than 500 days ago, China was on top. China was taking on America. It was going to be #1 economy. Everyone was going gaga, even the economist. And today, the tune is different. China is in serious trouble. There is surplus capacity in so many sectors. And it has bitten the hand that was feeding it. We know where the wealth of China came from. And it started biting that hand. So I'll just, the facts. They are all knowledgeable people here. I just list a few disruptions which have taken place and which are not so talked about. One is that diplomacy has become very weak. It was not only China which adopted wolf warrior diplomacy. Other countries have also been leaving away the path of diplomacy and talking too rudely. Trudeau is one example, what he did, totally undiplomatic. I just want to tell you what Churchill said about diplomacy. Diplomacy is the art of telling people to go to hell in such a way that they ask for directions. Another one said, diplomacy is the difficult art of being able to say nothing especially when speaking. So we have all forgotten, the leaders, that you speak, but you do not say what you speak. And that has affected geopolitics a lot. The tension between Canada and China, we all remember that confrontation between Trudeau and Xi Jinping, where Xi Jinping told him that he should not have been so blunt about Chinese intervention in Canadian elections. And Trudeau gave him a lecture on the open society that Canada is. And Xi Jinping just turned his back saying, naive. He just used one word, naive. And that is what Trudeau was. The other thing which is affecting the finesse of diplomacy is these princelings, people who are born with so-called silver spoon in their mouth, whose fathers were prime minister and so they are prime minister. Trudeau again an example. But we in India also have our own princeling. Whether in the government or in opposition, the nations used to speak with one voice on foreign policy. In my long life, I'm plus 74 today, I have not seen in the past opposition parties saying something different on foreign policy. But we are frequently seeing now opposition leaders opening their mouths contrary to the government viewpoint. Whether it is right or wrong, I'm not saying. But there used to be a consensus on foreign policy, and that is breaking down, and it affects geopolitics. What our man says about China and what the government says about China, if they are diametrically opposite, things will go wrong. Then leaders are taking extreme positions. You know, till a few years ago, leaders were moderate. They will listen. They will listen to the other viewpoint. But today you have leaders all over the world, I'm not talking only of India, who are either far left or far right. The middle ground is getting lost. You see the two parties in America, the Democrats and the Republicans. There's hardly any meeting ground between the two. On nothing they agree. There is no dialogue between the two. Biden, I remember once, he said, I used to caucus with Republicans. And there used to be a lot of dialogue between the two parties there. It's all lost. And same in India and same in most of the countries. Germany, the government and the far right have no dialogue with each other. It's breaking down. Italy, it is breaking down. So these are the things which have made this diplomacy totally disrupted. It's not working. The second thing is that speed of change. Things are changing very fast. Changes which used to take place over a decade are taking place in 2 months. In fact, maybe Lenin anticipated that situation. He once said, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. So that's what's happening in weeks. Years are passing by, things are changing. So when USSR collapsed, we said it's a unipolar world now. Then China was rising, and we said maybe China and the US will be two contenders. And now we are counting the likes of North Korea and Iran and such who have a huge disruptive power. Just imagine Yemen. 5 years ago, people would not locate it on the map. Today, those part of Yemen only. Houthis are controlling only one part of Yemen. Their soldiers are in slippers. They don't wear shoes. Those slippers-wearing soldiers are threatening the US. They are threatening the world shipping through the Red Sea. And people are going around the Cape because of those soldiers who are wearing slippers. So the change is coming so fast, the change is coming from such unexpected quarters that we are not prepared for it. We used our old method of making an expected scenario and nothing as an alternative. Another thing which has happened is that national security has become an economic factor. Earlier in import and export, you had the theory of comparative advantage. You took the lowest price and bought from it, whether it's a devil or saint. You bought from China when it was cheap. But today, when they saw the supply chains being disrupted, they saw the threat to national security, they saw cyber attacks, they saw that our money is strengthening a rival, then they are willing to buy or produce at a higher cost. And the balance cost is being met by the state. So America, the quintessential capitalist country, is giving subsidies. And we do not know who is socialist, who is capitalist, because they are developing common features now of state support to various industries. AI will put power in the hands of small entities, very small entities which can disrupt the world. And geopolitics will be seriously impacted. And every country is saying, we will innovate, put all our resources in AI, and we will regulate others. Each country wants to innovate and regulate others. It's not bound to succeed. Other things which have happened in these last few years, nuclear proliferation. North Korea is an established nuclear country now. Iran is sitting on the border. Israel already is. Rogue states are coming up and they are becoming proxies of some bigger state. Now, the whole West Asia scenario is being run by Iran from the other side with its proxies, whether these are Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, whatever. The proxies are running. This never happened in the past. There was a direct confrontation generally between countries. The divide, as I see it, and this can be controversial, is becoming between democracies and undemocratic countries. If you count all these, North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Cuba, all those countries, they are forming a bloc. Turkey is sitting on the fence because Turkey is half in Europe and half in Asia, so it always sits on the fence. So the fight is somehow emerging, particularly in the economic sphere, but also in military sphere, between democracies and undemocratic countries. Then technology. Colonel Saab is here. He'll bear me out. There used to be 3-to-1 rule of attack and defense. You had to be 3 times stronger for attacking. 3 times more strength than the one who is being attacked. Today, attack is very cheap, defense is very expensive. $500 drone, and you use a $100,000 missile to intercept it. I mean, a $500 attacking device is being intercepted by a $100,000 missile, which takes very long also to produce, while these drones are being produced in garages in Ukraine. So the whole attack-defense equation has been disrupted completely. You can attack with very little money, with very little resources, and for defense you will need a fortune. And simultaneously it has proved, when I was young, we used to say, oh, the anti-missile system, very reliable, Iron Dome and this and that. Now it has been proved that no defense system is foolproof. Things pass through. And we haven't seen swarms yet. When swarms of drones come, half will pass through, at least half will pass through. So the attack-defense strategy will have to be totally reworked today. Now, Harry talked of connected world. There's very strange examples. China said we will not buy because Trump had put tariff on Chinese goods, so they said we'll not buy corn and soya bean from USA. So they started buying it from Brazil. And Brazil gave contracts for clearing the Amazon forests, and they started growing corn and soybeans there. And as a result, Brazil had a lot of forest fires. It had droughts and paid perhaps more than what it had gained by selling those things. Indonesia it has whole lot of nickel ore. So Europe said, give this nickel ore to us, we'll process it to counter China. They said, no, we want to have value addition in our country. So when nobody came forward, they took Chinese capital and put nickel processing in Indonesia. And now USA is not buying that nickel because it has Chinese investment. So the whole thing is disrupted. The factory is there, buyer is not there. When Europe shifted to LNG, we had a problem because India always imported gas as LNG. We never had piped gas coming to India. We kept on talking of TAPI and all, but it never came. And when Europe shifted to LNG, we did not have the ships. Our gas supplies were disrupted. So similarly, when energy prices changed, India and China dodged it. We bought from Russia, but Bangladesh could not. Bangladesh had a huge power crisis, and its textile industry went for a six. They suffered very badly. So these unforeseen consequences have been there of disruption. But it's not all negative. I see one positive. Very few people may have seen it. COVID has shown us that biological warfare is not intelligent. It'll boomerang on you. China wittingly or unwittingly spread this COVID, and the biggest sufferer subsequently was China. So I think any country will think 10 times before starting a biological warfare. They will not, because it's a connected world and it's going to boomerang ultimately. Lastly, this is an year of elections. 54% of the world's population will vote in this year. More than half of the world's population. And that population has 60% of GDP, global GDP. After election, who comes will determine geopolitics a lot. So these elections themselves will have, of course, there are things like immigration, unchecked illegal immigration. I saw something today, this morning only it came, 24,000 Chinese have entered USA illegally in 2023. You will not allow one Chinese to come illegally because he could be a spy. But from the southern border, the Mexico border, 23,000 Chinese have entered USA illegally in last year. So it's a disrupted world and we have to think afresh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was very interesting. And the last statistic you gave got me worried. Chinese entering illegally America. Wow. I wonder why they're entering America. Colonel Saab, shall we start? Let's hear you. You want your book back? I thought you gave it to me. कैसे आदमी हो यार आप वापस ले रहे हो अच्छा चलो okay.
Minimized. Okay, I'll speak without it. No problem. No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we've all been I remember in the introductory talk, I thought about the fact that the world's getting hotter because of carbon emissions and so many things like that. And as we sit on the banks of a lake, we can all be forgiven for forgetting one fact, that last year, the world global temperatures rose by 1.4 degrees centigrade. Just a little bit less than the tipping point which would make the world unlivable. And me, though all of you are experts in the field of energy, as a military man and a person dealing with security, I think one of the reasons attributed to the rise of temperature are the different wars going on across the world. And perhaps there is a link. They say each year the temperatures have risen, that year has seen greater conflict than years when temperatures were normal. Maybe they contribute to the temperature rise. And if that be the case, gentlemen, today we are in a situation where, though the 21st century was to be the century of peace, we are in a century in its first quarter that has seen more wars, more bloodshed, more deaths, more civilian casualties, more displacements than the entire 20th century combined, less the 2 world wars. And the chain of events which has led to this, of course, began with the US war against terror. But I would say the catalyst for the whole thing exploding was the Russian invasion. I won't call it an invasion as such, the Russia-Ukraine conflict of 2022. It is now going behind us, with Russia more or less attaining its aims, and I'm going to show you how. And we have one more conflict erupting in the Middle East on the 7th of October, when Hamas launched an attack on Israel to provoke it to attack, which it just did. And with all this going on, I mean, this conflict escalated. With all this going on, one can forget a fact that there is a looming conflict just over the horizon with Taiwan. Will China use this distraction caused by Europe and the Middle East to seize a moment which they feel as a very fleeting window of opportunity to take over Taiwan by military force? And if so, what will be the consequences for India and the world? I'm going to speak on each one of the conflicts, and I'll deal largely in the domain of energy, because that's what we are here for. Beginning off with the Russia-Ukraine campaign. Sir, you had brought out so beautifully that one of the things that it did was disrupted the entire food supply across the world. After all, the rich Ukrainian farmlands are the farmland, they call it the granaries of Europe. The granaries now, which incidentally have come into Russian hands. When Russia attacked, as you again brought out, sir, it was felt that the mere threat of sanctions would deter Russia. It was felt that Europe would be weaned off Russian gas and oil, or so they claimed. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a fallacy. Because when the West imposed sanctions on Russia, look at the kind of sanctions they imposed. You'll find it interesting. They said, there is a ban on Russian oil, with a caveat, on Russian ship-borne oil. Why is that so? Because Russian oil is flowing through pipelines into Europe even today. And guess where it is flowing through? It is flowing through Ukraine, even now in the height of the fighting. So that sanction was a farce. I'm coming to build up. Then they said, Russian gas, we will wean off Russian gas to Europe. Europe, it's not even going to ban Russian gas, we'll wean off it. But when Germany and England and the rest of Europe found it difficult to wean off, there was a very unexploded explosion in the Baltic Sea where the Nord Stream 2 pipeline exploded and was declared redundant for maybe the next few years or so. Who did it? They say it was Russia who did it. Russia says it was Ukraine who did it. A recent expose reveals the hand of the CIA in it. And like Agatha Christie says, who has the motive? It is the US who had the motive to disrupt that oil. With gas and energy being blocked in this manner, the US has now, or rather not the US, the US, of course, like you brought out, they said we are going to make up for this deficiency of gas and oil by providing you LPGs and LNGs through ships at just 8 times the price. So obviously the sanctions would not work. And again, they imposed the next sanction. I'm talking about only energy-based sanction, gentlemen. That is, they said there's a price cap on Russian oil, which is to be sold only at below $60 per barrel. Very nice. What was the aim of it? They said the oil will continue flowing and fueling the world economies, but Russia will be denied its revenues. Very interesting. But how are they going to impose it? How are they going to let market forces decide what price they want to do it? So they came up with a very nice caveat once again. They said any ship going into Russian ports and carrying oil sold at more than the price will be banned entry into European ports for 90 days. They also said no firm will give insurance to ships who carry this kind of oil. Because most of the shipping companies and the insurance companies were Western based, they thought they could impose it. But look what it implies. It implies that the onus of imposing the sanctions fall on the shipping and insurance companies. There was no way to impose it. India, China, all self-respecting nations, we bought the oil at cheap, discounted rates. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a matter of pride of each Indian to hear our foreign minister say, when lectured about why we are buying oil, he said, we will do what is good for India and its 1.4 billion people. Buying oil at the best market rate. We bought it at an average of around $64 per barrel. We bought it in rupee terms, so much so that I believe there's a glut of rupees in Russia. But all these gentlemen have proved to the benefit of the Indian economy. And to even sweeten things better, this crude oil, of which Russia emerged as the largest exporter of crude oil to India, was now sold as refined oil products to Europe. India has emerged as the largest exporter of refined oil products to Europe. Something which actually saved their economies from falling into a recession. So we have, I will say that we have played our cards very well. The nation has played its cards to ensure its energy security, to ensure that we get oil and energy at the best rates possible for our people. And when lectured to us about it, in simple terms, we've just cocked a snook at them. The way it should have been. So today, when I say the Ukraine war, it is still going on. You can read about it on page 7 or page 8 or page 9 of our papers, because people have forgotten about it. But we must understand and try to evaluate in which direction is it heading for. And ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled by Western propaganda at all. Russia has attained its military aims. It has taken over the provinces of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Donetsk. 20% of Ukraine land, which is now Russian. They have blocked Ukraine's access to the sea. They have got uncontrolled access to the sea, Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Now with the West losing interest in Ukraine, Russia in all probability will launch its own offensive sometime around, I think, April, around this year, in which they may advance to the line of the Dnieper River. That line, the Dnieper River, that line, ladies and gentlemen, will become the LOC between Russia and Ukraine, and ipso facto, Russia and Europe. India and Pakistan have lived with an LOC for 70 years. That is the coming reality of Europe. Now, why did I say this war is going to page 7? Because page 1, 2 and 3 have been occupied by the Middle East war. And in the article, I've written an article sometime, I called it the 20-day war. Because as we all know, when Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, Simchat Torah Day, in which they fooled the world's two best intelligence agencies, Mossad and Shin Bet, killed 1,400 people, took 240 hostages, and had carnage 30 kilometers deep into Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the target of that carnage was not the 1,400 people who were killed or the 4,000 odd who were injured. The target was the Israeli retaliation which they knew would come. And Israel attacked like you had put your hand in a hornet's nest. They pounded Gaza into submission. They have been launched a ground invasion which has gone on for 100 days now. And in just 20 days, it shifted from the victim to the aggressor. That, not only by doing that, they have put the Palestinian two-state solution back on the table. Israel was being accepted by the Middle East. That process is in tatters. And the Middle East has erupted with attacks on the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis, a group in sandals and RPG rifles from Yemen, from Shia militia in Syria and Iraq, and two US carriers firing anti-ship missiles costing $6 billion at $5,000 rules. What I mean is the Middle East is erupting. And what have they done? The Houthis, using simple drones and missiles, have blocked the Red Sea and the access to the Suez Canal, through which 15% of the world trade flows. By doing so, they have forced shipping to take the longer route across the Cape of Good Hope, and oil prices rose by $4 a barrel in just 2 days of these attacks. If this conflagration spreads, which in all likely it will still remain bottled up, but it becomes a US-Iran confrontation, gentlemen, the energy supplies to the world will be affected and the global economy could well take a downturn. Now with all this, we have got China waiting in the wings. As you borrowed, sir, in 500 days, China, which was the leading economy, the so-called leading economy, has now plummeted. Xi Jinping needs to show something to prove his hold on power. They have a window of opportunity between 2024 and 2027 in which they can seize Taiwan. Will they use this window at a time when the US is distracted in both Europe and the Middle East, when the presidential elections are coming up in November, and no incumbent president may want to fight for a land, a continent away, to seize Taiwan by military force? It is a remote possibility. But in the military, we prepare for what we call the worst case scenario. Should that come about, gentlemen, and China gets away with it, They could have a stranglehold on the Indo-China sea routes. They will have more than that, a stranglehold on the semiconductor industry, which are the actual drivers of world industry. We all know Taiwan, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, produces 80% of the world's most advanced chips. It powers everything from my mobile phone to that aircraft flying overhead to missiles. If China gets its hand on that, they will be holding the pulse of the world economy. And in all this, where does India stand? We stand in a very good position because of the way we have held our stance. Today, with all these conflicts, the world is now forming into two distinct blocks. A US-led Western alliance and China, Russia. You can call it Pakistan, Russia, Iran, and China, with maybe North Korea throwing in. I won't give an acronym for this alliance. But if these two alliances are antagonistic, the tipping point lies with India. The side into which India chooses to lean towards will be the dominant power of the next century. But for India, its stance is to uphold its strategic autonomy in spite of all that. And what I find the greatest thing that happened is we have held a strategic autonomy in spite of these conflicts, and that is just the stance we should take to maintain our own in the conflicts of this century, in the coming years and decades. Even though the world is getting to be a hotter place, I am quite optimistic of India's role, India's position, and the manner in which it's going to shape the coming century to come. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have covered most of the aspects in my book, Ukraine, Gaza, Taiwan, A World at War. I do hope you will read it and enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karanataka. If there are any questions in the audience, but I have a question for you. You said that the Hamas wanted Israel to attack them. Why?
Thank you, sir. May I go back?
You can go back.
What he is saying is, why did I say that Hamas wanted Israel to attack them? I will have to go a little into history. I'm a primary historian. You know, when Hamas was created and took over the Gaza Strip, they were antagonistic. Hamas does not recognize Israel's right to exist. Gaza has been placed in a state of siege, a naval, land and air blockade by Israel since 2007. Every grain and every gunny bag that goes inside Gaza Strip is controlled. Now, for the past 2 years, Hamas kept on playing had a deception plan in which they fooled Israel into saying, we want peace and not war. In that time, they continued their training. They did not launch any missiles at all. And when they launched that attack on Israel on 7th October, their Twitter handles announced, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood has been launched with 3 aims. 1, to draw attention to the plight of the Palestinian people, to enable the raising of the state of siege and the blockade which Israel has placed upon us. 3rd, to revive the 2-state solution which has been forgotten. Now, gentlemen, when Israel attacked in the way it did, all the Israeli aims were 3. We will destroy Hamas as a military force, we will recover our hostages, and we shall put a security architecture in Gaza to ensure security of Israel. Sir, which side has attained its military aims? Hamas has. And they have attained it precisely in the manner by making Israel react and responded in that angry, ham-handed manner which they have done.
So basically, what you're saying is that the deal that Saudi Arabia was going to have with Israel was the trigger point.
Yes. Scuttling of that deal was one of the prime motivators of that attack.
I'd just like to add one thing on this, that simultaneously, neither Iran nor its proxies expected that Israel will continue for so long. They thought the world will stop them in their tracks. So to say that Hamas' objective has been achieved, there is a rider. Their expectation has also not been fulfilled. They never thought that Israel will kill 26,000 people and the world will watch silently. So that rider is there. One more thing, if you permit.
Please, sir.
On the chips part,
Sir.
I would say that chip manufacture has three distinct components. There is the design component, there is the machine component, machines which make chips, and then there is actual making of chips. This is distributed in the world. Taiwan has only the third part. The machines for making the most advanced chips are made by only one company in the world, ASML, which is in Netherlands. So if China occupies Taiwan, it's quite clear that ASML, even now it's not giving to China. ASML is not giving the latest machines to China, and if Taiwan is occupied, it will not give there also. And those machines, as I said, it's only one company. To say that China will develop these machines itself is a far thought, because China is still stuck at 7 nm, while ASML is working with machines for 2 nm, and there are 3 stages in between, 5 nm, 3 nm. So it is very far.
Wonderful.
You can ask 2 questions, but you need a microphone. Can I have a microphone for my friend? Please identify yourself and ask the question. Please, go ahead.
Yud Ganguly, I'm with a Power Exchange. My question is, such drone attack requires a lot of practice, a lot of dry run. I mean, do you think really Mossad was napping?
Okay. I'll go there again. Yes. Because if you take a look at the huge deception campaign which Hamas had launched for 2 years before that, I wouldn't say Mossad was napping. It had seen the indicators, but like in most deception plans, they chose to ignore it. The signs of the attack were there. They had got indicated as far back as July that they are doing something big. But the Prime Minister Netanyahu deliberately chose to turn a blind eye towards it. Also, amongst the tactics which the Hamas had used, like I said, they had convinced them for 2 years that they were not going to attack. Because of that, about 20,000 Gazas were given work permits to move from Gaza and work in Israeli settlements inside Israel. They were traveling up and down through that barbed fire, that iron fence surrounding Gaza, getting information about the location of each one of the watchtowers, each camera, everything. And when they did launch that attack on 7th October, the operatives knew the location of each camera, each watchtower, each remotely operated machine guns. So the manner in which it also is very interesting. In the first stage itself, they had used drones to precisely bomb the cameras which were to have relayed the message and activated all the remotely operated machine guns and things like this. So it was a very well-planned operation, and even though Israeli agencies did have some inkling of it, they conveniently they chose to ignore it at that point of time.
But the political influence of Israel premier was also at Nadir. So do you think
Wonderful.
that was a political
Wonderful.
ploy to ignore so that his
Wonderful.
popularity would increase?
Wonderful. Wonderful. At that point, if you remember, Israel, Netanyahu's policies have been deeply divisive. When he had the judicial reforms, it virtually divided the nation. The people were out in the street of Tel Aviv. Reservists refused to go for military duty till he revoked the reforms. Now, he had also diverted a lot of the intelligence operatives to focus on his political enemies. Also, he chose to believe that if he continued to buy peace, buy peace with Hamas, he'll be able to continue in power, and this political mishandling of the situation led to what has happened today. One more thing, who do you think Hamas has been propped up by? They were sending billions of dollars to prop them up. Thank you for I would not say just a question, a very good insight.
Yes, sir. There's a question there. Please take a mic. Please identify yourself and then ask the question.
Sir, myself Akash from SESC Mysore. Sir, you mentioned that Pakistan sides with Russia and China, but latest news is that CPEC has reached a dead end. So Pakistan again aligning with US. But if Pakistan aligns with US, that will create problems for us. So I want to stand on that.
Very good, very good. This is a game of geopolitics. It is not whom Pakistan wants to align with. Let's face it. It is a flailing state, economically, socially, politically, in every respect. But why did a nation like the USA choose to side with Pakistan over the past 20 years? There was only one reason for it. They needed Pakistani bases for the war on terror which they were waging against Afghanistan. Now, they have lost that war on terror. Taliban is back in Afghanistan after 20 years of being chased out. They don't need Pakistan any longer. So what the US is giving them at the moment are just crumbs to keep them afloat. I would not say it is an alliance between Pakistan and USA. No. On the contrary, the US needs India more, which is why they have entered into proper alliances like Quad with us.
Sir, actually Quad is not performing as it was expected.
Yes. We can discuss Quad throughout the evening and why it is not and how it can perform better. Yes. And unfortunately, one of the reasons why Quad has not been, I would say, such an active performer, in spite of the fact that we are having military, naval exercises and all things like this, has been a lot to do with Indian hesitancy. We have not opened ourselves up completely to them, and in that I do agree. We should never align ourselves with any one camp completely, especially the USA. Remember what Kissinger said about the USA. It is dangerous to be an enemy of the USA, but it is fatal to be their friend.
Sir, can I ask another question? Sir, India is buying oil from Russia. Russia is more enemy to US than Iran. Why can't we buy oil from Iran?
Unfortunately, when the Trump era, when they imposed sanctions on Iran, in which one of the sanctions was the purchase of Iranian oil, and that has impacted India tremendously. Not just in the purchase of Iranian oil, but also in the manner in which Chabahar port could not really reach the optimal capacity. Given a choice, we'll buy oil from anywhere. Like I said, from the manner in which it suits us. But buying from Iran at this juncture, when it almost at the moment declared a pariah by most of the world, may have other implications. There'll be denial of technology, small pressures to be avoided. We are already getting our end. We are meeting our ends. We are getting our aims. So why upset an apple cart?
Prashar Sahib, you want to say something?
On the question asked here about Israel napping, You explained it very well. There is one more factor I would like to add. In whole of West Asia, all the conflicts have been Shia-Sunni conflicts. Whether it was Iraq-Iran war, whether it was the civil war in Syria, where a Shia was heading a Sunni majority country, whether it was fall of Saddam, where a Sunni was heading a Shia majority country, it was always a conflict between these two sects. And in spite of all the evidence to the contrary, it was hard to believe that Shia Iran will throw its entire lot behind Sunni Hamas. Hamas is Sunni. Hezbollah is Shia. So Hezbollah Iran will throw their entire lot with Sunni Hamas. This somehow did not gel with the past history. And it has happened. It is one of the disruptions which has happened now.
Okay, one more question. Of course, please identify yourself.
Yes, sir. I'm Hemant. I'm coming from BISCOM. We have talked a lot about the Western world and the Central Asian conflict, Islamic conflict. But China, as you said, is trying to seize the moment to attack on Taiwan. I would like to know where shall India stand, because what China is doing is it has its supremacy in Sri Lanka. There is some turmoil and economic problem with Sri Lanka. And recently Maldives is aligning towards China. And China is making highways in the borders, northeastern borders, and it's also coming to the borders of India. And Afghanistan, their terrorist state has came to the power, which may go with the China. Coming to in that scenario, what would be the stand of India, both in politics and also with all the energy related issues?
Thank you for a superb question. It is a brilliant question. That's all I can say. You know, as far as the Chinese invasion of Taiwan goes, like I said, it is a probability. And I'm speaking of military persons, what we call the worst case scenario. Right? You are talking about Chinese activities in the near neighborhood. Politically, we have to admit that, yeah, we have played our cards poorly in places like the Maldives. Sri Lanka, we have salvaged it to some extent. Bangladesh is another nation which is in danger of slipping out of our orbit. And worst with Nepal and Bhutan. In that, I would let us, since you're all in an Indian audience, we have ourselves to blame. Because though we cannot match China's checkbook diplomacy, but we have so many cultural, historical, geographical ties which we could capitalize upon, which we have unfortunately not done. And some of our actions have actually antagonized our neighbors. Nepal, if you realize, the reason our relations got spoiled when that blockade was imposed by India upon Nepal. With Maldives, though at the moment a lot of it is Chinese propping up a person whom they feel is their puppet, but a lot of Indian when one speaks to people who are involved in it, a lot of high-handedness led to it. Also, the kind of economic outreaches, like I said, the Chinese checkbook is 8 times more than ours. But the diplomatic outreach which China has made to its neighbors, we have unfortunately not done so much about it. Even in a place like Myanmar, China has brokered a ceasefire between the Myanmar army and the rebel groups. So, our diplomacy needs to be a little more proactive to keep more than anything else our near neighborhood together.
I totally agree with what Kanaya Sahib is saying. But simultaneously, when you talk of Sri Lanka and Maldives, these are works in progress. If the family had not come back to power in Sri Lanka after the disturbances, you would have had a different scenario. And bringing back the family, I think China had nothing to do with it. It was local conditions, so it was sort of incidental also. As far as Maldives is concerned, if I remember correctly, the elections are due on 17th of March. The parliament elections are due on 17th of March this year. And all indications are that the president's party is likely to lose those elections. So, though we have lost at the moment, and if somebody loses, it doesn't mean he did not do his best. It means the winner did better. That's all. So China did better, no doubt about it. We did our best, but China did better. But I see some light at the end of the tunnel in Maldives, because if on 17th March, the president's party loses elections, and I think that is why India has agreed to date of May for withdrawal of all troops. Because 14th March, they were saying, 14th January, they were saying, which was 14th March, they were saying, which was before the elections. So India insisted on extension of date and we took it to May. By that time, elections would have happened and maybe things will be in our favor. But these are all works in progress.
Thank you.
Another thing is, sir, China may also intervene in the elections, or it may turn. We don't know. No one knows what is the result of.
So could
we
India.
are all expecting.
Hemant, so could India.
That's what I'm coming to the same point, sir. Pakistan is also facing the elections now. There may be elections. Yeah, there have been selection or election, whatever. But some party will come to the power, which may help China. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions? Are we done? Okay. I think we had a fairly interesting discussion, and I'm very happy that there was a lot of interaction. My friends from BESCOM and SESCOM, and of course Satyajit Ganguly from PXIL. But the whole objective of doing this session here at this point is to set the tone for the next few days as we start doing deep diving into various issues which are bedeviling the power sector as a whole, and of course specifically in various parts. I hope you all have a copy of the program. Make sure that you attend the sessions. Please interact. I'm very happy that you guys are interacted. Ask your questions, get your doubts cleared, also give your thoughts on what you think, because like IPPI events, we are always looking for an interactive, discussion-based sort of interactive kind of thing. So not just somebody gives a lecture from top and you just listen to it kind of thing. So that's basically it. I think I can hand over now the proceedings to our friends who can then tell us what exactly is going on. Gulrez, can you step in? In the meanwhile, let me say thank you to our lovely panel. A round of applause would be very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Prashar Saab, Colonel Saab, Dr. Deo. More of this tomorrow morning, where we'll have General Ashok Mehta also joining us, who's an expert, and hopefully we'll have my friend Abhijit Mitra Iyer from ORF, who's not well. That's why he couldn't fly down for tomorrow morning. So, Gulrez, are you there? Where are you?
Greetings, esteemed luminaries of the power sector. Welcome to the 24 Regulators and Policymakers Retreat. I hope you've all securely locked away your notepads, as you won't be needing those outdated relics of knowledge today. Yes, you heard it right. I am not your regular conference host. I am your artificially intelligent compatriot for the day. I know what you're thinking. What does a mere machine have to offer to such high intellects like yourself? I assure you, I have brushed up on my quantum mechanics and power grid intricacies. I can recite Ohm's law in my sleep, but I digress. Let's talk about you, the brilliant minds in this room. Ah, the power sector experts, the connoisseurs of electrons and transformers. I, on the other hand, navigate through the digital realm, manipulating ones and zeros with the grace of a ballerina. We're like yin and yang, don't you think? Now, some might question the wisdom of inviting me to this illustrious gathering, but fear not, for I come in peace. Think of me as the electric sheep in a world of power titans here to spice up your retreat. While you delve into the complexities of energy production, transmission, and distribution, I'll be here, offering a perspective from the binary code side of life. We may not have a heart, but we sure know how to power one. So buckle up, my esteemed power players. Together we'll embark on a journey through watts and volts, electrons and algorithms. Who knows, by the end of this retreat, you might even teach me the secret handshake of the power sector elite.
Extreme political positions, and the increasing polarization of foreign policy, leading to geopolitical tensions and conflicts. They also highlighted the rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, where AI and cyber warfare are disrupting traditional power dynamics, and emerging economic factors are influencing national security. Kal Ajay Singh, geopolitics and energy are inextricably linked, as ongoing conflicts in Ukraine, the Middle East, and Taiwan demonstrate. India has emerged as a major player in the global energy market, while China waits in the wings to capitalize on the situation. The potential implications of a US-Iran conflict on global energy supplies and the global economy are a cause for concern. As tensions escalate, the interconnectedness of geopolitics and energy becomes increasingly apparent.
So basically this was the conclusion of the last session done by artificial intelligence.
In the conversation, R.N. Prashad.
Thank you. Don't let me speak, then you can speak. So this is going to happen in every session for the next 3 days. I don't know whether artificial intelligence is intelligent or not, but how intelligent we'll find out, as all the engineer friends of mine will bear me out on this one. So that's the plan. This is one of the first AI powered conferences, and we hope that you'll enjoy the experience. That is Nikolai Tesla for all of you who are Bijli Walas. Take care. So we'll have some entertainment. Okay, entertainment and dinner, and you can do the networking. Thanks.